Was I right? Is it a horse? He doesn't know what it was. Mutated camel. Figured 10 seconds of shadow puppet on the screen would be fun. Hey, plesiosaur. Welcome, everybody, to our session that is called something that just makes me think of my master's thesis because it was on The Good and the Bad and the Ugly, that movie. So, Good and the Bad and the Ugly of Local Account Management. I would love to welcome on stage two brilliant, kind, wonderful people that work at Jamf alongside me, Mark and Rob, to talk about LAPS. Gentlemen.
Q&A?
Oh, yeah. Q&A. I'm supposed to talk about Q&A. So you get another chance to clap louder because I'm going to talk about this first. So one, welcome to everyone that is joining us virtually, as well as everyone that is here in my hometown of Austin. I'm so glad you're all here. We are going to do Q&A at the end. Q&A will happen largely in the JNUC app, especially for our virtual attendees. So I've got this iPad here. The questions are going to pop up, so we make sure that our virtual questions are addressed alongside ones that the audience will have in place here. So virtual attendees, please join us in the Q&A at the end of the session. And we will once again, loud claps, everybody, Rob and Mark to talk about password management for LAPS. Let's go.
You have the clicker.
Oh, yeah.
It's over there.
Who has the clicker?
Find the clicker. That's the title of the presentation.
Well, we're quite prepared. I bestow the honor to you.
Thank you. Try not to screw it up. Okay, so we're here to discuss, as you saw the title, the good, the bad, the ugly of local admin management. That title will make more sense as we go on.
My name is Mark Buffington. I'm a consulting engineer for Apple Technologies based out of Minneapolis. Been at Jamf for a while and focused on a lot of Apple workflows and changes that happen when it comes to enablement. I'm with here.
Oh, okay, cool. Yeah, and my name's Rob Potvin. I have to read my name there. I'm a senior consulting engineer. I reside out in EMEA. Live just outside of Amsterdam. And tulip fields are near beside me and everything, so yeah. So, our agenda, let's dive in. Now, local admin management means, like, we're talking LAPS, right? First off, the good, so the good about it. Then we're gonna dive in the bad. Then we're gonna dive in the ugly. Using Jamf Pro LAPS. Wrap up, and if there's time, Q&A. So, while we're here, a quick audience poll, right? There should be some, okay, perfectly. How many people here are deploying a local admin of some sort?
Show of hands.
That's a lot of hands for the people virtually, because you can't see it, but there's a lot of hands up here. Perfect, okay.
And of that local account, how many is that the Jamf management account created from user-initiated enrollment sessions? Show of hands on that. Okay, not as many hands. How about accounts created from a pre-stage enrollment, the managed administrator? Okay, more hands for that, just for virtual attendees. And with that account, is that something that is used in sort of day-to-day use case, just trying to let everyone see what everyone else is doing? Like, is that a password and login? I see some no's.
And last but not least, in one-to-one deployments, how many of those admin accounts show up on a 5-volt boot screen? Couple hands there.
Okay. Kind of number.
Okay. And last but not least, anybody here leveraging some sort of LAPS-style password management solution? Either Jamf or some other workflow? It is Jamf and, by the way, right?
Okay. Awesome.
Okay.
Some hands there.
Yeah.
Cool.
Perfect. So let's go into this one here.
So to start out, let's just ask the question, do you need a local IT management or IT admin account? This is really the question to think about throughout. Last year, I was in a presentation that some personal feelings, generally no, but there are some workflows, maybe if you're using a pre-stage enrollment and skipping account creation, making a standard user that you might need to. And Also, there may be some use cases where you may want to delegate some hands-on tasks to other people, yet you don't want to give them access or delegated privileges to a solution like Jamf Pro. So let's start.
Yeah, we can start with the good
agenda.
right?
But hey,
No,
wait.
oh.
Give me the bad news first, please.
Yeah, bad news, okay,
Okay.
here we go. So, regardless of current practices, like I used to be in Jamf training, so it was always like, Jamf admin or LAdmin and something like that, and the password was Jamf1234. Let's make it secure, let's add an exclamation mark, right? All in all, having a password on a device and having an account on a device and knowing the password is probably not the best thing, right? So that's really the bad. The bad is knowing the password, right? Also, changing workflows, shifting deployments and strategies and things like this. Yeah, leveraging that, probably not the best way, right? Now, the good. Well, there's more ways to keep your Mac fleet secure. We have to, if you want to use a local admin, really, when it comes down to the philosophy behind Labs within Jamf Pro, is that any account that is automatically created, so this would be either in the pre-stage or the user-initiated enrollment, should not have a known password. And that password should be automatically rotated if need be, and on top of it, there should be some sort of audit behind it. What we're not talking about today, because then this would be the probably session that lasted till the party, and that would be the deep dive into the API, right? Remember, there's some brain dates for that. Also, we really like water, so we can stand by the water cooler. You can hit us up. And really some of the low-level details. So let's dive in, right? So, passwords for any Labs user should be automatically generated, right? The management account, and what we're talking about here, there's gonna be two different things. You have your Jamf management account, so sometimes we say the JMF account, right? Then there's the pre-stage account that's set, and that will be like the MDM admin account. So there's two different accounts that can be made. So these are some of the things you need to know, especially for the amount of information that is coming in the rest of this presentation. Please note that Jamf management account, or the JMF account, that is just enabled by default, while the MDM management account, it needs to be enabled via API. After viewing a password, there's a timer. It will automatically change. By default, it's 60 minutes. All access on this process is audited. And reality, as you can note from our feelings on this, this does cause some, I would say, workflows may need to be changed. And what we mean by this is, speaking of the future, it has been announced, we do have some depreciations that accounts using known password, you'll need to adjust that deployment flow. But that was a lot of words on the, remember, you're gonna be quizzed on this, the Jamf Managed Framework account and the MDM pre-stage account. I'm a visual learner, so I like to, to kind of walk you through. So we have our UIE, user-initiated enrollment settings within Jamf Pro. In there, we have the ability to turn on, the account, right? The management account. If it's turned on, then boom, yes, you will have the JMF Labs account. If you don't check mark that box, then yes. Then you'll have the, I clicked. You'll have the no Jamf Pro Labs account, okay? Simple. It's gonna get a little more confusing.
And that's at the time of enrollment. Keep that in mind.
At time of enrollment. So if we now go to our pre-stage, okay? We have a local account configured in pre-stage. Now remember, this is part of just how pre-stage works. If you want to change to create an account or have that account be a standard account and not an administrator account, or delegate some pre-settings to be applied to that account when a user is creating an account within the setup assistant in macOS. Or if you're going to have no account created and using Jamf Connect, there needs to be that account set within that pre-stage. It's just the way it is. If you have not changed the account settings within your pre-stage, then you're back to kind of like the UIE settings. Have you set the UIE settings for management account? Then you will have the Jamf Pro lapse or no lapse, depending on those settings. If you have, and have done the Jamf Enable account in the UIE settings, again, I'm telling you, this is why we're doing it visually. There's a lot of information here. Then you could have, I've set a pre-stage account, I have a management account within my user-initiated enrollment settings. I now have 2 separate Jamf labs, the MDM labs and the Jamf Managed Framework labs. Did I lose them? I think we're good. And last but not least, one more build. And last but not least, if you have not set anything within your pre-stage in the UI, if you have not set your settings, let's try that again, too many words. If you've not set your management account in the user-initiated enrollment, but just have the MDM pre-stage admin account, you then have the MDM lapse account. Now, there's a nice little gray box with a star there, and that star states that for the MDM lapse, you need to enable that via the API. I saw a couple people taking pictures. This is available in resources as well at the end of the slide, so you'll be able to take that home, put it on a t-shirt. So, in review, again, quiz comes later. UIE, right? It's either on or off, pre-stage on or off, but that the pre-stage, if the UI settings are on, you have the possibility of having 2. All good? Perfect.
So why that big flow chart? How did we end up getting 2 types of lapse accounts? You all may be familiar with the fact that enrollments can have different accounts created, but I wanted to walk through another visual example just to show what a life cycle of actually using one of these accounts looks like. Because ultimately, it is going to be a little bit different between an MDM admin versus a JMF admin, where the MDM admin uses MDM commands to set a new password, while the Jamf management framework handles the changing of the local admin created from agent enrollment. So with this, from a visual, just showing a life cycle, firstly, of an MDM managed admin account. We'll start here. We've got the account. It is in Jamf Pro. It is randomized. Nobody knows it at this point, but someone wants to check it out. So a user with privileges in your organization can check it out and view that password. And then at that point, the clock starts ticking. So whatever you have that time set to, they've got a set amount of time while that password's still valid. Next up, once they've viewed that password, they're going to actually use it. There we go. And we'll put in the MDM admin in the login. And at that time, some other things are going to happen. And this is something important to be mindful of when looking at the 2 different types. In any healthy environment, as soon as you log in, the bootstrap token is going to kick in. macOS will request it, and then it will generate and give that user account a secure token and volume ownership. This is going to be something that certainly you may want, and even if you don't want it, you should be aware that it's there as well for that account. But then, when it comes to password changing time, the command to set a new password will certainly set a new password, but it does not change the cryptographic password as well. So again, that may be fine, but ongoing, if you want to use this account on this computer for cryptographic reasons in the future, that token is essentially broken at this point. So in general, we want to show you this here first because this is something that is maybe the less desirable if you're looking to use this as an account that you want to delegate or give people access to. On the flip side, if we switch to the JMF admin account, we've got the same steps towards the beginning. We start with a randomized password. A user checks it out, they view it, and it starts the timer. Then they log in. I've got my JMF admin account logging in. It's going to then leverage the Bootstrap token, get the privileges of a secure token and ownership. And then the nice part here is when we get that password change, once that hour is up, the next check-in, the Jamf agent is going to submit the old password, submit the new password, and all those cryptographic privileges remain. And at the end of the day, you've got a happy user if you need to do those cryptographic functions. So keep that in mind if this is an account that you want to use for those delegated tasks for your users. So we've got the bad is poor choices with passwords. The good is Jamf Pro Labs, where you have those randomized passwords and the ability to check it out. But ooh, ugly beauty is subjective. So your goals may be objective. Everyone may be given goals from your organization's InfoSec departments of what you want to have on the computer. And you all may want something completely different. Some may want no account. Some may want an admin in their back pocket that they can use as a break glass scenario. Some may even go as far as demand a local admin with a secure token, which, as many of you know, is not a normal zero-touch type of deployment. But all those differences are fine. But it's worth knowing that any approach that you take, you should know kind of where you're at and be extremely mindful of tokens. And this is kind of broad because at the end of the day, you're going to want, in any healthy deployment, file vault enabled, yes, personal recovery key escrowed so you can get password resets, access to the disk. Your primary user, of course, you want a secure token, volume ownership so they can do updates and unlock the computer. And then you also want to have the Bootstrap token generated, and that's going to be best done when it's the main user using the machine, having it created so you don't need to do programmatic actions. So with all of that in mind, if one looks at things that might be ugly, there might be a lot of different paths that a person can go on to get to some of your goals. But instead, I'd like to start with something that I like to call the happy path.
Trademark pending. No, I'm joking.
Not actually trademark, but really, this is something that looking at this happy path as a general framework of embracing macOS paradigms of tokens, automated device enrollment as well. And generally, unless you divert from this, you're not going to have to think about a lot of these things and they'll be able to just work. So diving into what this happy path looks like, we'll start with some automated device enrollment basic things. And we'll kind of go through a little bit of these and what the outcomes give you. Ideally, you have the end user. If you're having them unbox the machine, they set up, they authenticate to your identity provider or other directory source so that they can get that unique personalized content. And then your Jamf pre-stage, or if you're using Jamf Connect, for example, that's going to set their levels of administrator or standard user privileges. If you need accounts deployed on there, you can. And then, of course, enable File Vault afterwards. But what does that get us? When you do that, you're going to get a number of different benefits for each one of those things. Firstly, you're going to get the primary user with the first secure token and volume ownership. A Bootstrap token is escrowed. And then the File Vault key being escrowed is awesome for things like password resets, or if there's ever a scenario with local policy on an M1 and standard users that you need to repair, that can be done in recovery as well. But then truly, this is going to save a lot of time and energy over other workflows, because if you diverge from this happy path and don't get the right users the tokens, backtracking and getting things set up can be a little bit messy and very insecure if you need to deploy scripts with passwords, which we all should feel a little bit gross about, things like that. So a little bit more on File Vault as a high-level reminder for some items with File Vault, there's a number of ways to do it with Jamf Pro. I'm not going to tell you, well, let's go back. No, actually,
And then it's PRK,
we're
then
coming
File
up
Vault.
next. So we'll do this first. So one other thing with the PRK. This is something that I feel a lot of people don't, or at least I'm not hearing of enough people doing it in practice. But on Apple Silicon, using the PRK to boot the system in macOS Monterey or newer is amazing. Simply put in the key command, Shift,
Option, Shift, Return.
Option, Shift, Return, yes.
Burned in your memory. Option, Shift, Return. Who knew about that? Okay.
We got some hands,
Some
but
hands.
but not the majority. So
No.
it is awesome. So what that does, here you're looking at a screen, this is Jamf Connect. You don't need Jamf Connect here. You could have a regular login window, but the important thing is you have an internet connection. So even if you don't have a local account on the computer already that you can log into for this break glass scenario, you've got Jamf Pro. You can do whatever you want with a network connection when it's at this screen, or if it's Connect, use it for a just-in-time account.
That File Vault screen comes up. Option, Command, Enter.
It was on the screen.
Yeah. But yeah.
Yeah.
Boom. Get past that internet connection. Fix your problem.
So with that, getting File Vault enabled, getting that PRK on there, there are multiple ways to do it. Know which one way is right. Personally, if you have Connect, I prefer that because it's going to be something that doesn't rely on a deferred enablement, log out, log in. Other login window plugins, if you're using Crypt, that would work as well and the similar. But the standard method of enabling File Vault uses the concept of deferred enablement. So policies or profile enablement from Pro does that. And then either the agent or an MDM command will escrow the key. And then also just a little note, any lab environments, you probably don't want to do anything with File Vault. So make sure that you're excluding them. And as we're on some happy path, I've got one more thing on the tangent of labs or shared use devices, and that's going to be keeping some other options in mind and leveraging some of the new advancements that Apple has these days. Erase all content and settings, the ability to set a recovery lock password in a pre-stage, the ability to auto-advance over Ethernet as well. But also with this, with those shared use devices, I mean, maybe this might be a time where you might want to have a known password, even if you know that it's not the best thing ongoing. It may be a very useful thing to have, at least in your deployment workflow. So if you're not having a natural action of someone getting that first token and bootstrap token, that could be scripted and then cleaned up and kind of remove that afterwards. So some of those options, if you do absolutely need to make a local user account with a known password after Jamf has sort of natively taken that away from other things, there are a couple of options. The first one is something you should not count on for a deployment workflow, and that is an API endpoint for Laps to set a password, which you can totally do, but that's going to be after enrollment, after it's randomized, can set something. And then a Jamf Pro policy of course, whether it's a native payload or a script to create it, but you need to be extremely mindful of when that policy runs and when that action takes place to have it be after the first cryptographic users have been made, unless maybe that's what you want. I've certainly talked to folks that have had both.
Yep.
So all of that said, just as a reminder here, a lot of the things when it comes to secure token and volume ownership, these laws of tokens have been pretty constant and straightforward since macOS 11. But the really big thing to be cautious and aware of is here highlighted that setting that first initial password for a user or passing it in a script or something like that, that's going to give it the first secure token. And that may not be desired. So it's big warning here on Apple's text. And for disclaimer as well, those two accounts that Jamf can deploy from UIE or MDM, those are exempt from this first secure token part, unless you are running like a script or something like that with the password. So hopefully that helps for a little bit of happy path, as well as ways to look out if you're diverging from it. But what about Jamf Pro Labs itself? As you may know, it's something that does not exist in the GUI yet, and that's coming soon. So we wanted to share some options.
Yeah, we'll just have a quick look. Excuse me, pardon me. Been talking all day, so yeah, we'll just, using Jamf Pro Labs. Now, firstly, before we even get into using Jamf Pro Labs, I think the first thing we need to recognize is that these new API endpoints that are currently there, they require a management ID. So we need to find the target computer and get the management ID. But the cool thing is, now you can find the management ID in the UI. So you don't need to go to the API, excuse me, API, find the management ID, and then go back into other parts of the API and find the management ID. So, first, wait, it's too quick. Try that again. Okay. Jamf Pro API. Just go to your Jamf Pro server. So instance name, jamfcloud.com if you have that, /API. Click on the Jamf Pro API. Here you're presented with a credential box, right? In this case, just for, we're using a username and password. More on that later. But you'll be able to log in and generate a token with your API to then go to the next step. Here you'll see all the API endpoints for Jamf Pro Labs. The next thing we need to do is we need to ask for the accounts that are on the device. How do we do that? We use the new management ID. Paste that in there, hit next, and there, as you can see, we have a list of 2 accounts on the device, right? In this case, we have the JMF labs and the MDM labs. So as homework, find out on the flowchart where this, no, I'm joking. But yes, you'll see that there's 2 accounts there.
And also, these 2 accounts will also show in the Jamf Pro GUI as well.
Correct.
And where it's traditionally said managed by and just listed whatever name is of the management account, in latest versions of Jamf, it'll say managed by, and it may show both accounts, or it may show none if no actual Labs capable user is on there.
Yeah.
So it's available there too without the extra step.
But this is more fun.
Yeah.
So the next thing we need to do here is, for example, we wanted to get the password from the specific account. So we just listed out the 2 accounts that we have. I'm going to go in and put in again, that client management ID. It's an important ID. Don't forget it. You'll be quizzed later. And then here, the username of the account. In this case, I'm looking for the JMF account. So I add that in there. Out comes the password. What has happened? Remember that cool circular flowchart that we had? I just requested the password. It starts the clock. So in 60 minutes, this will be reset because that's the default time set. So I can take that password, do what I need with it. If I come back in 60 minutes, it'll be a different one. I wanted to see or audit. There is an audit endpoint as well. So here I can go in and I can check when that person who did it. So again, at the very beginning of these steps, I showed I logged in with a username and password to get that token. In here is now listed who requested that token, because that was the authorized user who requested that token to request this password. So I have here listed all out, Acme Soft Admin, the time and date when the password was corrected and viewed. Cool? Okay.
All right, so throwback here to last year, JNUC. I presented in a session with Sean Rabbit about just-in-time account creation, other ways to work with local admins or not have them as well. And one of the workflows that I presented in that session was a kind of a novel way to make it so the MDM managed admin would have a randomized password, really to kind of get around having that known password. But for this and many reasons, please stop. Stop on that. That workflow has been totally Sherlocked by the Jamf Labs capabilities, and that's a good thing. As it is today, though, as we mentioned, the MDM rotation stuff is not on directly today. until we have that more in the GUI. There is just a very brief API workflow here. I'm going to skip a number of the steps, though, because ultimately, if I go in and I view the settings that I have for this, I'm going to see that auto deploy enabled is false. Auto deploy, it's not going to say that in the GUI when it's there, but if it's more analogous to what the automated MDM enrollment admin is. So that's set to not rotate. So I want to switch that instead to be a true. So as we go in here, we'll zoom in. It will change to true as I save that. I can simply do this in the API Swagger docs if I want, or through some other means that we can mention as well. So ultimately, in summary, the best IT admin may be no admin. Personally has my vote, but if you need an account or want to have an account that's available to be used, the Jamf Labs solution is a great way to have that randomized account, set audit permissions, access permissions, who's going to have that for an audit trail.
Stay on the happy path.
Absolutely.
Trademark not pending. We just thought it was cool with the TM. So just remember, like, those are really good steps to know. I learned a lot from them as well. But like, yeah, stay on the happy path.
And give feedback. Right now, our product teams are working on getting things into the GUI. So any feedbacks that are out there now and idea requests, those are actively getting looked at and making some nuance to this because quite honestly, we've set it so one password is only randomized. We want this transition to be a smooth thing as well when you have the pre-stage admin also have a randomized password without interrupting your deployment workflows.
And then don't forget, for anyone with a phone, because only a few people have those, right? There is the resources link here, so that will link to all the resources that we quoted, some of the documentation. Also, there's now added to the resources the Jamf Labs app that's in the Jamf app, the Jamf GitHub repo. Really cool. It'll let you kind of do, without having to interact with the API, you can interact with this GUI. Within the settings of the app, you can either use the username and password or the new function.
Yeah, right? the API roles in clients. So if you generally use single sign-on in your org for access, API roles in clients can be used with this app as well if you want to paste in the serial number and get a lapsed password using that. Just really as a stopgap until it is in the GUI as well.
It's also a little bit easier to work with an app than sometimes the Swagger docs if you're not used to Swagger docs. So, perfect.
Awesome. Well, thank you all for joining us. We'll hand it to Emily to help with Q&A.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Mark and Rob. So some of the questions that are being asked have kind of been addressed by some of the notes at the end. The ones that I want to start with, though, were Mark rules. Just wanted to say that. He does.
He does.
Follow up. Rob also rules.
Aww.
Just wanted to say that.
We have the same birthday, too.
Yeah.
What?
We're 1 year apart exactly.
That is so cute. I love that. Okay.
I'm older.
We're going to start at the top and work our way down. Some of these things have already kind of been answered. I also want to point out that for those of you that are looking at the Q&A, we do have folks on the product side at Jamf that have been answering questions within the Q&A. So
nice.
some folks are hopping in. Matt and Deanna have been in there answering some questions.
Oh, nice. Cool.
Who are the perfect people to answer those questions? So I don't know if they're here or if they're virtual. Wherever you are, thank you for stepping in and answering some questions for folks virtually. So the top question with the most upvotes is, there is only one question. That's not entirely true. When will Jamf Labs be in the GUI? Which, I think I'm supposed to, on the virtual, I'm supposed to go in and say, this is the active question. All right, active question.
Okay.
The replies that we got we said, can't give any ETAs, but it is something we are looking at doing based on customer feedback. We understand the blocker for adoption and needing a GUI. There was a follow-up, Matt is correct, et cetera, et cetera. Check out the GitHub page for the Jamf Labs public application that gives you a little helper app so that you don't have to try to interact directly with the API until that GUI work in the product is implemented.
TLDR, it'll be there when it's ready. So It's something, it's coming.
But if you try Laps and then have feedback and then let us know, that will prepare us to make even a better GUI, right?
Yep.
So, please.
All right, so we have another one with, I'm kind of going down how many were voted up, with the exception of reinforcing that Mark and Rob rule, which is true. Is adding the Laps account to File Vault a bad idea, and why? There is a comment on here, but if you two want to weigh in.
Sure. So, so the Laps account, I would not add it to File Vault with the intention of ever logging into File Vault with it. I suppose if you went through that workflow one time where someone did have hands-on and they went through, that account would be eligible to be used with File Vault. Like say they use it, Jamf Pro sets a new password, no one knows it until they check out that password. That could work, but why not use the PRK?
I was just going to say the amount of work to enable to get that to be a File Vault
Yeah, and
enabled account, it's just easier to use the PRK.
And in practice, many orgs and users don't want to see another user on their account anyway. There's
Right.
many orgs that work like that, not all, but it's...
And just an FYI, for those who miss the acronym, because sometimes I'm like that, PRK stands for Personal Recovery Key. Sometimes, though, it's like, what was the PRK again? So, Personal Recovery Key.
We are big fans of acronyms
Yes.
at Jamf and at most companies. Anecdote, when I worked at Home Depot and we onboarded, we got a 4-page document that was all the acronyms used at Home Depot, and you were expected to learn what they all were before you started, so you could keep up with conversations. There's a note in here as well from Matt that mentions that current methods of password rotation make it difficult for these Laps users to be File Vault enabled. However, the method we use for the management account, password rotation, does also update the File Vault keychain information. So that user would be the least risk to add if you're looking to utilize your Laps user to unlock the volume. But to the points made above, there's an extra visibility and layer of complexity there that maybe you just don't want.
Yeah.
All right, so answered. Okay, next question. Software update requires a local admin in Ventura on Apple Silicon. How can this be engineered around?
Disagree. Software
also.
update does not require an administrator. But on Apple Silicon, it requires a volume owner. So if you are deploying, traditionally have deployed a local admin that you just assume you can do all the things, because that user has not signed in through the login window, naturally received a bootstrap or the bootstrap token and privileges, it won't be able to do that until then. So we do see in some deployments, if the wrong user gets the wrong order of creation, you may have the wrong user with the token and your admin can't do it. So if you are using standard users and it prompts for an admin, it might be something else or some other aspect of the software update system that's asking for that, because the volume ownership dialog is going to look a little bit different and act a little bit different with the username always pre-populated.
Yeah, it is a bit confusing too, because people think that, oh, they need an admin password. I'm not admin. It's asking for a password to do an update, but technically it's just asking for the password of the user.
Yep.
So.
To add on the comment that Bruce gave to his own question, scripted in Bash, that is. Is that behavior slightly different if you're trying to script out the update versus?
You can't update via
I didn't
script.
think you even could do that.
If your user is a volume owner,
Okay.
I mean, there's ways to securely try to securely pass credentials,
Yeah.
but in Monterey, the software update binary does allow for passing volume owner credentials in that argument. But if you're on the latest operating systems, declarative device management is pretty cool for updates. I can say just from beta testing and trying to make things not work, it just works every time. It's kind of nice.
I'll take your word for it. Next question. I'm sorry, I trust but verify. But I always trust Mark, and you all should too.
Oracle.
Here's another question. If you have your pre-stage specify an account name and password, but it is set to skip account creation, will this be forced to use Laps or not?
So if you're skipping account creation, that's going to be within the context of the setup assistant itself. And to do that, you have to create an account using the MDM account configuration or settings command.
And within Jamf, that account that you've created above skipping that account creation is the one set for the MDM Labs pre-stage.
Yeah.
You have to still turn that on.
Yeah. A note from Matt in the comments to that question are, if Labs is enabled in the API, then that pre-stage account would be Labs enabled. If those settings have not been touched, the pre-stage account is not Labs enabled.
Needs to be enabled.
Perfect.
That was
Thank
that cool
you,
gray box.
Matt.
Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you, Matt. Yeah.
We'll take a pause on the virtual questions for just a second and see if are there any in the room that haven't been covered thus far in the virtual Q&A questions. I saw a hand all the way in the back. How loud are you, or do I need to come to you with the mic?
I'm pretty loud.
Okay, I'll repeat the question.
Okay.
The question is, are you guys adding a feature where we can be selective about the accounts that are lapse enabled?
The question is, will there be functionality added to be more specific about what accounts can
Be Labs enabled.
be Labs
Yeah.
enabled? Yeah.
So in the GUI, things aren't built yet. So there's a lot of things that have been talked about with that. But ultimately, if you're choosing to create an account firstly in user-initiated enrollment settings, the decision has already been made in 1049. You're going to get an account that has a randomized password, and it's up to you if you choose to take it and check it out. With it, I believe there is a desire to have some unified settings when it comes to this for viewing it both within an inventory record and Jamf Pro settings. I just can't say exactly how that's going to look until it's out there as well.
And remember, you have the option to uncheck that box.
Yeah.
So then there won't be a management account set there. That doesn't, and you don't, again, management account originally was there back in the day for things like Jamf Remote, right? Or Casper Remote when I was using it.
Pour one out.
Aw. R.I.P. Pour one out.
And then
Casper Remote.
it was there for institutional recovery key change, which we all know for the last I'm saying y'all now, last 4
Congrats.
years that's been, or 5 or 6 years, that's all been deprecated. Don't use it ever. It's like, Hack Central, so.
I just want to call out, there is a comment in here, there's no resources linked to the webinar page. Go back through the video, the QR code at the end links to a GitHub repo that has the resources link.
Go back a slide.
We can probably pull that up again.
There we go.
Resource links, yeah. So that's where you'll want to go for now. I'm unsure how things.
I don't know if that's going to work on the stream, but let us know in a comment.
Yeah, and if the question was the webinar, speaking of last year's JNUC presentation, I don't think we have it on that resource link.
We will
but,
update it.
But if we haven't, we can update it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There are some useful resources there that Sean Rabbit had some scripts where in these life cycle of an account, maybe you do need to break glass, use that account. It gets the token, but hey, what if you don't want it to have that token, but you still want to have the option to use it? In that case, he's got some scripts and some workthroughs in last year's session that talks about some ways to remove the secure token, some ways and workflows you might put into self-service so your IT admin or help desk person can know that they just remove it, or you set another time-based thing to remove the token.
I'll call out another question here that again was answered by our dear friend Matt in the comments, which is, will there be access controls to separate which roles can access the lapsed password? I'm assuming that's Jamf Pro roles based on how the question was framed. Matt replied, yes, there are new privileges for which Jamf Pro admin accounts can be passwords. So that's that answered. Gosh, how about this one? Looks like, well, we can maybe wrap on this. I know we're coming right up at 4:30. What's your take on adding secure token volume owner to the Lapse account? We kind of covered it a little bit in other areas, but.
No.
Personally, I am not for it. And the reason
agree.
is that when you take the happy path, you've got your user has secure token and volume ownership. You always have the PRK, so if you need to use the PRK, then the lapse password to log in, or the PRK and whatever you'd like to log in, you can do that. But ultimately, in order to get that account a secure token, that means that someone needs to be entering a password on the keyboard or insecurely putting something in a script. And putting fingers on a keyboard doesn't scale so well, and putting passwords in scripts should always be avoided.
There was that note, what version of macOS introduced that personal recovery key shortcut? That's a Monterey Apple Silicon
Correct.
Requirement, yeah.
She was listening to her.
Any last thoughts as we wrap up at the end of this fine Wednesday and get ready to head over to the party tonight?
Labs questions really work well over a beer, so we're also at the party tonight.
Well, we'll be at the party. Also, where else you can find us? You
too.
can find me on MacAdmin Slack. I think it's M. Buffington.
Yeah, me, I'm Motion Bug, Rob.
And around and stuff.
Yeah, we're around.
Fantastic.
Please.
Ladies
Thank you
and
very much.
gentlemen, help us in thanking our speakers today. Thank you so much for joining us. We'll see you tonight at the party.
Thanks.